There's the solar project site on the corner of West Creek and Kendall Hill Roads. There's a house right there on the corner, as you can see. The site is a huge, big cornfield. I'm assuming this is it. There's another, looks like a barn work building down at the end of the field. And a house just across the road here on West Creek Road. This corner there are a lot of trucks going in and out from Omea, and this is the road, Kendall Hill Road, that goes out to Route 7. It's less than a mile to Route 7 from here. Bordered by woods and on one side and West Creek Road on the other.
The last Jeep is right around where they show this little current farm access road, and we're probably standing right about here. So from a site plan standpoint, we've got 100-foot setbacks from this road, 100-foot setbacks from this road. There is 50-foot setbacks from these other property lines that we'll maybe venture on down there. But no other really current existing assets that are here. It's all plowed cornfield. The design itself is driven post, fixed racks. Based on the audience, I think we all know what that is and means. Is there any questions for what that is?
They're not trackers that'll rotate, is that what you're saying?
Nope, they're driven posts in the ground. You're going to have a steel racking system that's at a fixed degree. This is a 30-degree angle, and modules that are fixed to that steel racking system. No movement at all. From a grading standpoint, what you see is what will follow. We're not going to come in here with large bulldozers and try to push dirt and move dirt around and do a large excavation. That's was represented fairly well in the petition documents itself. That's my normal goal, is to not have a lot of site preparation work and work with the grades and the contours that are here on the land.
Any clearing?
No tree clearing.
No tree.
No clearing. I'm gonna check to make sure I don't stick my. Yeah, no clearing, no trimming. Here's this little clouded line here to show the edge of these woodlands, and there's no proposed impacts on there at all.
One of Jean Bessering's issues who's our aesthetics witness, was she was concerned with where the plantings are going to be, that it might be too wet to allow the plants to grow, but that seems kind of like a crazy question today because everything seems very dry. She says there's a berm that there's plantings going to be in that she says she's concerned is going to remain wet and may not be able to accommodate growing of plants.
Yeah, so I'll go to that right in 1 minute. I'll flip this board over and there'll be some landscape details that we'll talk about. So project impacts. We've got a proposed overhead line extension coming off that pole on that corner, which is represented here right on the side of the tree line. If you're looking at it, it'd be the pole where you see the probably railroad crossing sign or that orange crossing sign. It's that one right near the tree line. 2-pole overhead line extension to a underground riser pole, so those 3-phase conduits will come underground, and then they'll service our metering gear, service disconnect, and 2 pad mount transformers. This existing cut is what we're proposing to extend a gravel access road into that point of interconnection. So that's a good general description of what's down south. Everything in the middle of the project is driven post, no real interesting features. On the north is another site access road. The whole point of this secondary access road is to get me to this transformer without connecting these access roads through the middle of the project and impacting wetlands or going up and over grades. So there's 2 access roads. This is the primary point. This would be your service point. This would be the disconnect of the project, would be all located here. This one is shown purely for the convenience of getting to that other secondary transformer.
And the other thing that's worth noting is, I just asked you to observe that the buildings to the north here are owned by a Markowski entity, and this property is also owned by Markowski's, and so this road and the property line is shared with a commercial facility. Will it the solar field continue to be owned by Markowski on some lease basis or something?
Yep. The underlying site control contract right now is a lease with the Markowski entities.
So all the collection lines these are all going to be underground?
Everything is underground until you get to this point, and that point will convert back over to overhead. There'll be a new pole here, which will have the riser pipes coming up the pole. We'll have a new mid-span pole, and then connect to the existing pole.
Did you consider burying the whole thing?
Some elements of this project had so Sun Edison was a prior developer. They did some of the legwork. Some of the elements were picked up from them, so no, I didn't personally consider it. A 2-pole line extension tucked into that tree line isn't extremely obtrusive, in my opinion. You know, if it was a 7-pole line extension going right across the middle of the field, that would be goofy. But I don't think it's super out of place.
In fact, is that a pole in that little gap of trees to the left of the pole we were talking about earlier?
I think
Looks like a pole.
It looks like a pole.
sure does.
Very straight.
Sure does. I just don't see any wires connected to it. So if there is a pole, I don't know what it's doing. But yeah, that's.
Yeah, there are wires.
So.
It's been a while since I looked at this, but do you have your system impact study done? I mean, are there any distribution upgrades beyond that interconnection point?
Nope.
Nope.
So no, there are no distribution impact upgrades beyond that point.
That are needed.
From a GMP standpoint, your impacts are the new line extension,
Yep.
and that's it for new equipment. I'd have to look at the details. There might be a fuser being replaced or a relay and a transformer, but we'd be talking about gear and components within existing structures for GMP.
Yeah, I think that's what, now that you say that.
Yeah. That might be there. That's pretty fine detail that I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not like there's 6 new miles worth of 3-phase
Yep.
1-out wire being run or anything like that. That is not the case.
This is a 3-phase.
Yeah, this is the primary 3-phase line that's feeding Omia.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about a line that's is capable of handling the load, that's probably one of the best ones in the state.
Might there be an issue with historic survey work in
Yep.
that corner as far as burying?
Yep, so let's talk about historic DHP real quick. Phase 1 was done generally from here down. They found a couple of articles of interest. They're doing a phase 2 on these couple of points. That's known, it was part of the petition. When I got involved in this project, I kind of said, hey, why aren't we utilizing this bottom corner? It wasn't on some of the original submittals. So we did expand it to that area, and we're doing a phase 1 with UVM CAP program coordinated with DHP to do phase 1 here, phase 2 on those couple of elements on the side.
Okay.
You had asked about that at the pre-hearing, what the status of those.
Right. I'm just
and-
curious if any of the phase 2 areas of interest are in that southeast corner.
Phase 2 is going to be really generally a couple points in and around here, and 1 point up here.
Okay. Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. Good. I'm Stephanie Smith with the Agency of Agriculture.
Oh, great.
Sorry,
I'm with the Public Service Board. Thanks for joining us.
I got stuck behind a train.
We all got stuck in various places, so no worries. And we haven't talked about soils yet.
So just to be clear, when you're talking about the south, you said southeast?
When he was asking
We're talking
about burying, and you said folks before you had done evaluations or had considered, may have considered. I was just curious if that was the reason they went above that.
Nope. Phase 1 arc study didn't show any impacts there, so that wouldn't have impacted the overhead versus underground.
Okay. And both transformers are on the ground, correct?
Yep.
And
Yep.
what-
So you got one pad-mounted equipment location here, and a second one here. This one will have pad-mount transformer, and then it's going to have electrical switchboards, primary metering cabinets, and disconnects. That's what these 2 other rectangles show you. This guy would just have a pad-mount transformer.
Isn't this the one where you were wondering about some of the equipment being on the pole?
Yeah. Well,
So it was a recloser?
It was a recloser and a metering equipment.
Yep.
But the recloser you said is going to be pole mounted.
So, let me read. Recloser is shown right here on that mid-span pole. This secondary pole is just going to have the riser conduits on it.
Riser
So-
and the switch.
No switch.
No.
Nope. all that is going to be right here on this first box. So that first box, you're going to come down the riser into our array location, and we'll hit service disconnect, then we'll hit primary metering cabinet, and then main switchboards downstream of that. The only pole mounted equipment is that overhead recloser.
What's a recloser?
Yes. There's several different styles. I'm not sure which
A
one.
general description I'll give you is 2 horizontal bars with 3 cans in it. The can's about the size of a gallon milk jug ish. That's a general description of what a recloser is.
Okay.
You know for sure that that's what they're going to put here, or
No,
they're going to be the bigger can with a 3-phase unit.
The reclosers I've seen, they're called Viper something. I can pull up spec sheet and follow up because I don't know. I can't tell you for sure. You know, it's GMP's gear. I'm kind of a little handicapped in telling you exactly what it is. But the ones that I'm aware of are those Viper reclosers, which are cylinders about like this, 3 of them in a line on 2 horizontal aluminum strut brackets. So the only other detail is fence, and the whole project's fenced. I want to check. I think these are shown as wooden fence posts from the aesthetic consultant's recommendation. That wooden fence post, the fencing material itself is black coated. It's called fixed knot wire fencing. It's pretty standard in a lot of the submittals. The company that I use is Beckart. Some people don't know this, but we actually install them upside down, so the bigger holes on the bottom to allow different animal migrations, but that's pretty standard. Nothing else that special.
And it may be worth, before you flip it over, just to repeat what you said about grading for the benefit of the... I'm sorry, I missed your name. Stephanie.
Hey Stephanie, how are you? I'm Andy. So talking about soil impacts real quick, this road and these road improvements, based on the grades that are here, I'm going to scrape lightly the surface, and what that does is it gives me a little bit of an edge profile, and I lay fabric in that, and then I fill that with stone. I don't haul in a lot of material, I won't haul off a lot of material. I wouldn't come in here and dig a 24-inch trench and make some big road. So that's from right in front of where you parked, and then that's shown circling to here, and then the secondary access road is there. The primary trench locations are shown here. Those are pretty minimal. They're anywhere from 24 to 40 inches deep, depending on what type of wire we're burying. And from an import standpoint, this clay might be a little tough depending on what it looks like underneath. Sometimes we have to use sand to embed in the pipe or not. In clay, it's probably going to have some sand to get in those pipes, so we get a good bed material where the pipes don't bust.
How about staging area?
This is shown as a staging area, and that's shown as a staging area. My typical construction methods is I don't need to do any improvements on the staging areas. They're shown as hatched areas, but it doesn't mean I'm bringing in fill or stone or doing a lot to improve them.
We're cutting trees.
No
Hard
trees.
to tell.
No trees, and I'm kind of reminding myself of some of the natural resources. There are some elements in here that are either protected or have special regulations. I think Don's probably going to know better than me. I see a black oak, or there's a tree species in there that is a specific. There you go. I knew you. There's a specific environmental habitat that this is contained, and that's regardless if it's full of stone and ledge and rock, and I don't want to go there anyway. There's no impacts in that area.
Have you done the geotech that assures you just do the ribbon posts?
Yep, I did that myself. That wasn't from the prior developers, that was me. I did that 6 weeks ago, probably.
I'm just curious, how far down do they go?
Posts, anywhere from 6 to 8 feet. This site is a little tough because it can't really tell on the surface, but there actually is quite a bit of sandy soils here, and that's actually not good for us. Sandy soils pull out a little bit easier than clay hard soils.
And when you talk about scraping a little bit for the access roads, is that the material that will go into the berm?
material from the berm is what we're proposing out of site access road cuts and any excess spoils that are from our trenching.
And Andy, you had mentioned before that you're not planning on doing otherwise regrading of the array field at all.
Nope. No, and one of the things that I'll be looking at closely, let's see if I can get this right. This general area, and we are more than happy to walk if anybody wants to, but this general area is pretty steep. So once I get into actually doing layout and I've got survey pins and layout points, I'll look at an area like that and either install it or not install it, depending on once. It's hard to do some of that in CAD really well. Depends on which way the grade's going in relation to the racks, and that will be a field decision whether that goes in or not.
It's basically on the other side of that
Yep.
sort of see that little rise there.
Yep, that rise. The other side of that is kind of steep, plus it's north facing, which will make my shade management tough anyway. That's the one area. If anybody said they were going to grade this, that's one of the areas they'd be focusing on. And for that little amount of square footage, it wouldn't be something that's worth the amount of site work to prep it. So the rest of the prime ag impacts, driven posts. The trenching on these systems is relatively minimal. A lot of the wiring comes right down the racks. We try to focus on one trench location and consolidate all of our pipes in that trench.
I would also mention that we just received a set of questions from the Agency of Agriculture about soils, which we're going to respond to. And all that, of course, we're going to specifics today.
Yep, VHB's got that. We already started some of those kind of back and forth. A lot of it's relatively simple with just identifying types and impacts in calculation sheets. So that will be probably a week or so. So that's a good site plan intro.
I just want to ask Don about the wetland boundaries. Do you know if your staff has confirmed the boundaries in the classification?
I think they have. I think they looked at it and determined you're outside of it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
do you want to make sure we get over and see those areas while we're at it?
Take a look, yep.
Do you know enough about that oak and talus habitat to point it out for us?
I don't, but my assumption is it's kind of straight across from us, more or less.
I have
Maybe
the
we can
VHB
figure it out.
I have the VHB report with me. I have and it's probably delineated on there, so if
Yeah.
you want to, we can.
Just curious while we're here. We
I
might
think
as
there
well.
are two separate natural community types. It would be in the VHB report.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one was a common, the other one might have been an S3 or an S2, but it was very, relatively small in extent. I think that was the talus.
You want to talk about landscaping?
Okay. Separate map, same way. So, site access road, we're standing right around here. Southern Kendall Hill Road, and then West Creek Road. So the berm that we talked about,
Andy, can I just, before you get
go ahead,
I just want to preface this by saying that, and this is in the pre-file, that all the landscaping plans were discussed in advance with the town and with the neighbors, and so this is a revised plan from what was shown in the 45-day, and it reflects the input and we think the concurrence of those entities. So,
But this is what's in the...
this is in the petition,
pre-file.
correct? So, go
Yeah.
ahead.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there are any neighbors here. We've done what we can, and that's not always perfect, but there's a reason there's no neighbors here. We talked to them pretty heavily and tried to do everything we can to...
Nobody there.
I think that house, and don't quote me, I think that house is vacant. I think that's a bank foreclosure. The next house, where I think you see that mailbox sticking out, there's two individuals that reside in that house, and we've talked to them a lot. They've been very involved with us, and we've gone back and forth. They had a lot of input on the landscaping plan. So for what it's worth, we've done everything we can.
What about back here? Have you, the neighbors on that side?
I have reached out extensively to every abutting landowner and made it pretty public that if there's anybody else that's got something.
I think at least 4, 2 and 2, that one and that one. I think at least 2 gave signed, the petition has signed.
We got quite a few.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was matching it up to the homes,
Yep.
so I would know.
Yeah, I think you're right. 1, 2, 3, and then there's, I think, once we get to a lot further down to the Markowskis, there's some houses up there on a little bit of a rise there. They participated too. So me and Chris and Nathaniel have tried to reach out to as many people as we could.
Can you just remind me, when you did the noise studies, what was considered the closest residence for those?
My site plan is correct. It's going to tell us 236, 197, 159, 164. So that
The empty house.
that is the empty house. 161 is right next to it.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is a 500.
But that that isn't necessarily the closest residence from a noise perspective. From a noise perspective, probably this one.
Which one's one?
To that.
Yep. I would agree. Landscape?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Berm location. So TJ Boyle's landscape landscape expert that we work with. I've done quite a few with them. This landscape berm, that cubic yardage calc is based off of stripping and soils from both the site access roads and from the trenches. That's what this is showing, and the whole point of that is to raise that site profile, because you can see the road grade is 6 feet, 7 feet above existing conditions, to create a screening element from the south. The rest of the screening is on grade. It's not showing a whole other berm that's following all around West Creek Road. And if you wanted to talk about plant species, I'm not going to be very helpful because I'm not the expert on that, but I can point out from a quantity standpoint and a density standpoint, it's pretty significant. We can look at all the heights and talk about, how big, how much, if we want to, but from a landscape perspective,
In general,
it's a pretty
trees
solid.
are on that north boundary in general. There's some arborvitae and some cedars on this along the road, but most of these are shrubs, mostly.
Thank you.
There's some maples and some taller ones, which will screen between that building.
At the pre-hearing conference, you had asked whether DHP had seen this plan. We are going to file some supplemental testimony, which will say that they have and that they find it acceptable from what we understand. So.
This neighbor here, is this a residence or is this a commercial? It looks like.
I think that's his residence with some commercial use maybe happening or something going on.
Phil, Robin, Frenchman.
Yeah. Nathaniel and Chris did my neighbor reach out in my town coordination, as you know. So I didn't personally knock on it. I got 2 other guys on my team that did that for me. But I know they did speak to him.
What's the volume of soils that are within the berm located in the
There's
that you're getting
a
from the
250-page petition book in the back of my car that definitely has that answer, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
Are you coming tonight or?
site? No.
If we can take it out before you leave, we will try.
Yeah.
You
No,
can email me with a page reference.
well, I mean, or we'll just add it, because we have a follow-up anyway on the prime ags and the calcs there, so we can just add it there and just, quantify cubic yardage there and quantify where we took it off from the site impacts.
In your decommissioning plan, would you remove that berm and the trees?
I wouldn't. I mean, the landscaping elements in 20, 25, 30 years really, I think they'll be mature and there'll be an element that if we chainsawed everything down, we get in trouble, right? Somebody would be mad at me. Like, why'd you cut it all down? It looked beautiful.
So in your plan, it is to leave it?
I would want to go to my plan and read it specifically. The problem is the prime ag soils probably are going to say you're going to strip and stockpile all that stone out of here, you're going to rip the fabric out of here, you're going to take this and you're going to replace it back into where your trench locations were and where any concrete foundations or vaults were. On other jobs, I haven't built a landscape environment on top of the berm. So I want to look at what the plan says.
That's a good intersection of ag interests and the town's interests. Maybe 20 years from now, if that's an attractive, well vegetated area.
So I take it they're this side of these wires, that berm and the plantings?
That pole, it's going to be a little hard to see, but that pole is shown right here. That overhead line, that overhead extension, here's the second pole that's right in front of us.
Yeah.
So that's bisecting that berm that wraps around and kind of follows this little bulb out in the road. So if you can see my hands, that's the two pole locations between the one on the corner and the one right there.
So most of that will be low growing.
I don't think we show any huge mature species, but like I said, I'm not a plant expert. I'd have to follow the chart, and it'd take me 5 minutes just to figure out which ones are which.
Let's see. Maybe the heights. I can find it. These, here we go. Arborvitae 15 to 30. Seems like probably the highest. Most of the shrubs are 6 to 8 or 8 to 10.
Yeah, and I'd have to look closely to say which ones of those are underneath the line location versus,
Place them so they don't have to be maintained as a recommendation.
Yeah, no, it's a good. I wonder if Mike Busher even
Topping
kind
armor
of connected the dots on that, right? So it's
Yeah.
pretty fine
So I'm
detail to
looking
know
at
that.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, it's
If you get 15, you probably won't get 30. Probably from 30.
So,
I'll grab my book just so we can see where the natural resource features
that
are.
would be good. And generally, I'd like to just take a walk around the site since we're here. If anyone has something specific they want to get done, see, make sure that we do it. But I just have a loose plan of walking around the perimeter.
Yep. So when we walk, I know we had a couple comments on natural resources. Class 3 wetland is down in the bottom of that hole over that rise that we discussed about the area of steep grades. That's shown just on the other side of that. And then if we walk here and come down this northern side, there's the Class 2 wetlands that's down in this corner in the woodland. It's a lot easier to see from that side because you can see back into the backside of the tree line along the railroad tracks.
So if it turns out that the Department of Ag really would want that soil to be replaced, and the town really would want to keep the trees that are in that berm, is there a solution?
Well, we'd have to talk to Prime Ag because Prime Ag doesn't like us hauling in material to build berms out of. That wouldn't be the end of the world, right? If we had a Prime Ag soil stockpile that happened somewhere else, which is feasible, there are other areas where soil can be stockpiled without having other major impacts. And then we'd have to haul in another material to make that berm. And then the berm could stay, and the soil stockpiles that were set here for Prime Ag could be redistributed after.
Hardwood?
Seems like a nice conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe Andy can try to make sure that happens. But it seems like a good conversation to have happen sooner rather than later.
It's from a project standpoint, that's not difficult.
Do you know what the typical depth is for primary ag designation?
I want to say that in a reclamation plan that's used through Act 250, we request if you're excavating or doing something with land and you're going to save the soils for a future reclamation plan, we have 48 inches to be dug. And then piled up in separate piles based on the horizon, and then preserved in that manner, and then returned in the same reverse order at a later date. And that seems correct.
Good news is
I've seen that profile image. I've seen that cross-section image of Act 250 recommended Prime Ag letter memo thing, right? So I've read that. The good thing is this is all very shallow. Trenches are relatively shallow. they'll range from 24 to 48 depending on voltage. So there might be some where we do hit a different soil layer that is different. And the only deep features are these vaults for the transformers. So those vaults are about a 12 by 16 foot excavation. The excavation depth is usually about 6 feet.
So the good news is Markowski is in the excavating business, so he might have access to soils of all varieties to please any need.
Who worked this field? This isn't this year. This is last year's.
This is this year.
This is this year's.
Yeah. This was just a couple weeks ago. I don't know
It's been a dry year.
if it's really Markowski or if they've got a sub land lease on the ag. I don't know. I couldn't tell you for sure.
Markowski's the property owner.
Yep.
So Don and I have found the natural communities on this. There are two. There's the smaller area is described as northern hardwood talus woodland, and that's what goes along in this front edge, kind of as a finger, and you can see the way it rises in some of the exposed outcropping. And then the larger area, which seems to occupy really the entire forested area to the railroad tracks, is described as northern hardwood forest, rich northern hardwood forest. So that's really the entire forest there.
And what's the label on the little fringe along the front? I'm sorry.
Oh, this one is the northern hardwood talus woodland.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm going to take off. Enjoy your walk.
Great.
I'll see you all at 7.
Okay.
Or some of you at 7 o'clock.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Have a good night.
Clockwise, counterclockwise. Anybody have a choice?
I said we started
Follow the
firm.
sun.
Okay.
Right next to that pole, right there. And actually on my site plan, I didn't pick it up when we were looking at it, but yeah, that was a pole, and those are wires to it.
Yep. Yeah, skywire.
My understanding, I would say that's just a support pole, the only reason it's there. It's a weird one. I've never seen one with a big span like that.
Didn't want anchors in there, field.
That would be a guess.
That'd be my
Yeah,
guess.
Markowski said, no way, you're not putting anything in my field.
Yeah.
Which is weird because they would have put it right there in the corner. It would have made a difference anyway. But so my proposed plan says, okay, come from that pole, overhead line extension to an inline pole with the reclosers mounted on the pole, and then a second pole span to the riser pole and conduits going down underground. A good guess, 1, 2, 250 feet back. I could guesstimate it when we walk along that edge. And if anybody wants the big picture, that was that secondary planting plan that was shown on this corner to help soften overhead line extensions. And obviously you see the grade of the ground's coming up here, so we're a little bit more at grade with the road as opposed to being depressed where we were over there.
You hear they're not putting anything underneath to do line extension or planning?
We're not showing anything. You might have got us over there, but I think we made it on this one. And they actually, now that I'm looking a little bit closer, they are showing on
Not here to get you.
on this other corner. There's 4 features over there too.
Okay.
So John's not here anymore. He would be able to talk about this more, but I don't know if anybody noticed or knows what OMIA is. That's an industrial mining operation that happens just a little bit southwest of here. This is their primary truck route. So,
Grid actually takes care of the electricity from
I'm sorry, what
Grid does, National Grid.
But that's
Oh.
National Grid. You're saying they supply them with electricity? That's weird.
It's probably a combination of all kinds of resources that help OMIA operate with their electrical demand. GMP is, they're a customer of GMP. That I know for sure. Grid might have some.
You just reminded me, Vermont Marble used to be a separate little electric company. Probably you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were.
And that grew out of the fact that they needed to run electricity years ago.
Yeah, there's a
But then
Belleville
they,
substation just over
right,
here.
but then they sold that, right? And then that was eventually sold to CV.
It was.
Was.
Yep, probably 90s or 80s-ish, I'm guessing. Omia started, and they owned a couple of their own hydro plants too. They got to the point where they couldn't even locally source enough power, so they either permitted and built or purchased their own hydro plants and ran their own muni electric and gave electricity away for free all over the place around here to help some of their PR interest. Sold all those assets to CVPS.
Yeah, actually, I think that lasted a long time, into the 2000s, before they sold that.
Yeah. They looked at it several times, but it didn't go through.
Right,
That's
right.
my recollection.
It did. Yeah,
Eventually.
I remember reading the filings on it.
Okay.
So the only reason I bring that up, it's pretty high traffic area. There's other areas that you might have a more quaint, picturesque view of what's happening and the potential impacts of a fixed-driven solar field on that area. But this area is busy. This is their primary haul road. Somebody mentioned the train. Well, the train was probably hauling a bunch of Omia tanks of calcium carcite slurry.
Tracks are down here.
Tracks are just over this rise, right there in the bottom. Yep.
What's over here? I went over some tracks when I came in.
Yep, they've got a secondary track spur that comes right into their plant. They've got two different methods, and I think to be accurate, when I say trucking, I mean actual trucks. They're not trucking from here to this railroad station. Railroad is right from their plant, and a lot of their slurry is sent right on trucks. They're hard to miss. I think they're blue and white color usually, and they're typically round tank trucks for calcium carbonate slurries. Good? Polls? Happy? Check? Okay.
Check. I don't know. The panel's out. Exactly.
Area in here, and my distance off that, I'm going to guess, that pole is about 30 feet off the edge of vegetation. VHB did the site plan, and their typical, when you see that drawing, that's the edge of the canopy. So when you see those little clouds, that's where, when they come and they shoot on the edge of the canopy, so 30 feet off the edge of that. When we get into the rack locations, we're a lot closer to 80. Some places it's going to be even more than that. Like that location, you're over 100 feet. I would say the resource that's closest to any type of vegetation is going to be this line extension and how that gets set. So you're probably limbing that one little branch that's got orange leaves on it. That would be the only feature that I think is anywhere near us. Right on the top. So see those tight contours? That's that hillside. Staging area is just right, sitting on the top of that and then going south.
Okay.
Yep. And we are standing probably right there.
Not now, it's dry, but there's, the soil is damp and there's some pressure. It's dry.
This looks like the edge of the trees right there. That's why I was wondering about cutting it.
Yeah, no, that is edge of trees, and they're showing staging area right to the edge of the tree. So it doesn't mean I wouldn't cut a tree to drop a unit of modules on a pallet. I would stick it right on the edge of the field, and that would be it.
How far are the panels back?
It's smaller.
But it's got a channel that goes under the track.
You want to do it in your two groups or do it at once?
You guys want to?
Nope. Staging area is on the inside corner right in here. So we walked around the corner and we're right next to the railroad track. So we're probably standing right here. Yes. So property line right along the railroad tracks, 50 feet off it, running north-south. And then my impacts here, I can't quantify them exactly, but from the edge of the farthest overhanging tree, we're about 80 feet back. So if you're looking at it, we'd have to walk, but 80 feet back. At least 50 from overhang vegetation. And then this corner that we're in is this whole area, which we don't have we don't show any impacts.
It's shady.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, if we just walk out to that shade line.
No, we did that. So we set up our shade profiles like this.
Shade line. Yeah.
We get a little bit better because we do get some height and elevation. And once we got into here, with the 50-foot setback, it just didn't really.
And this is the area you're doing the phase 1 archaeology?
Yep. Yep, and that should be soon. We were waiting for the field to get cut because it was all in corn, so we couldn't really do anything. That field was cut a week, maybe ago. And UVM cap is, I bet, going to be here next week. Based on what I know. They might even be here tomorrow. Good?
So I haven't.
A friend of mine works at that.
Have a reason site-wise to do it, or you gotta have a power company that wants to incentivize production. And that's not come across anyway.
Impossible to concentrate. So I guess in that sense, right?
When I worked as a hearing officer in the Massachusetts,
No, we won't.
we actually did for things like water tasters. We had
gentle,
judges.
south-facing slopes, and then we can shrink our road to rows quite a bit and get a lot more density. I didn't stop for a reason, so we can keep walking, or if we got questions, I can tell you where we're at.
We've seen most of the interesting things. Maybe we'll finish and go back along the road or roadside.
So there's nothing over in this area.
Well, since we're standing here, let's just do it.
Road somewhere, right?
Yep. So existing tree line is buried right along with that property line. So this existing tree line is what you're looking at there, that sloping hill. We are at the bottom, so we are standing
So no more solar panels to our right.
nope, that's
Okay.
north, and nope, there is not.
This is the end of our.
Yep, we're standing
Okay,
right about
great.
here, a little class 3 pocket in this depression. And my side access road is going to be about 10 feet that way, and it'll run perpendicular right to the road right to the West Creek Road from here.
You said you would just shave off a little bit of the soil so that you're going to maintain this topography right here.
Yep, there will be no movement of
Okay.
soils. There won't be a bulldozer, moving that mountain 12 feet this way or anything.
I was just thinking for the road even.
Yeah, road's just going to go up and over the hill. The only thing I really need that road for is to get this transformer installed. That's really, and to get a way to touch it, right? 10 years from now, you got a problem, something's got to happen, you got to get to that transformer location. That's all this road is doing. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't even have it. It's a nice to have, but not a necessity.
You said all your roads are going to be fabric, right?
Fabric with stone.
Stone.
Yeah. Typical detail for me is a Mirafry road-based fabric, and then about 10 to 12 inches of a crushed stone material for pretty simple road base. Looking over. So this site is not uniform enough to play that type of balancing act. So good guess, we are probably right about where the apron is showing off the existing road. There's another landscaping element, and this is the northwestern corner of the line of landscaping plantings going down the edge of the road.
Has everybody seen what they want to and asked what they want to?
Well, thank you.